And there's no.
All right, we'll go ahead and get the meeting started. First thing on the agenda is the leak adjustments. Looks like everybody had the correct paperwork or anything.
I do have one question on there, only because I was reading through the explanations and I was curious. The gentleman on the second page, on 713 Elkhart Loop, next to the last one, I guess, Tavares McIntosh, his statement that he wrote said that the plug in the back of my toilet was unsealed, so I sealed it by super gluing it together to fix the problem. And I assume that fixes it because I'm not exactly sure what the plug is, but if he doesn't put the plug in, it's liable to start leaking again. He's aware that he won't get another adjustment if it fails again this year.
They're all told in this.
Okay, just wanted to make sure that was not a problem.
I don't think super glue and water really fixes it.
Well, I mean, I didn't know, but I thought, well, as long as he's aware that he can't get another one, he will be okay.
I got one here in April, it says the sprinkler froze. April?
The deal, they probably froze in the winter and they didn't catch it and been sitting there leaking.
I make a motion that we approve these adjustments as presented.
Got a motion,
Second.
a second, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right. We go on to the minutes. May meeting. Only adjustment I see is Kathy Barber. I'm not sure how she could be present and absent at the same time.
Be two places at once.
You can fix that.
Well,
Make
with
a
that
motion,
one
we-
correction,
No,
Yeah.
go ahead.
I was gonna say, with that one correction, I make a motion they be approved or accepted.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All righty. Well, then we'll move right on to the financial report.
Financial report's good. Water and wastewater are in better condition than they were last month, and they're in better condition this month again than the month before as well. So they're on their way up. Wastewater is in the positive, and you'll see the meters are still technically in the negative because the infrastructure, or the meter money still has not come in, but we've been in touch with ANRC, of course, and they are just waiting on plans and specs to be approved by their engineer. They only have one engineer for the entire state right now, so they're really short-staffed, but they're working on it. He said we were fourth on his list of approval, so it should be pretty quick, and then we're ready to start submitting invoices. So once we get his final approval, we'll be ready to get the reimbursement started.
We were expected to get that money in June or July, weren't we?
Yes.
Is that still
Yes.
the goal?
Yeah. Yeah, it has to be because the interest rate will cut off. I believe it's July, so they know that they'll be getting into it before then.
Everything we have to submit back to NRC process, but can't get it submitted.
It won't take long, then once we submit the request for reimbursement, they say it takes 3 to 6 days to get the account, so it won't take super long to get the last plans and specs approved. Infrastructure fee money, you'll see is still been compiling, I think last week or the week before, Joy paid out the first quarter bond and debt fee out of that, and that helped a lot with water.
Bottom of page 7.
Yeah. So overall, they're on their way up and looking pretty good. Once we get the meter money in, of course, it'll look even better. And Leah Circle as well, I don't think there's much reimbursement there, but we'll be completing the project, and that will come out of any of our funds, so that'll be good.
Please.
there's not any questions about that.
Motion, we accept the financials.
Get a motion?
I'll second.
Okay. Motion and a second, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Next on the agenda is public comments. Do we have any public comments? No old business, new business under public works.
Yeah, so we went out and did, as I told you guys, the RFP for the rate studies. We had 2 come back, Wildan and Rhett Tillis, and they both have representatives here. They're both going to do their presentations. We do ask that one leaves the room when the other one presents. So just walk up, and I believe Wildan's going to go first, and Dan Jackson and Matt with our Jackson, and Matt Tompkins are here to present. So, you guys ready?
Thank you very much. I'm Dan Jackson, Vice President of Wildan Financial Services, and I appreciate the opportunity to be before you here tonight. I have about 40 years' experience doing water and wastewater rate consulting throughout Texas, Arkansas, the Southwest, and throughout the United States. And I was project manager on Wildan's last rate study engagement here for the City of Bryant. And we do appreciate the opportunity to come back before you again today. For those of you who are not familiar with Wildan,
Quick on the side.
okay, when turn is on, it really works better. Okay. Just, I want to start out just by talking a little bit about Wildan. Wildan is a national company. We do financial consulting all throughout the United States. We specialize in rate studies and development impact fee studies, but we also do a variety of other work. We work almost exclusively for municipalities. And so our experience is, like, again, concentrated on the Southwest. I want to focus mostly on the Wildan Plano office, which is the office that I run, because that's the office with the professionals that will be assisting the City of Bryant in this study. You see, it's great to have a national firm come in here and talk about all the experience they have with Cincinnati, Ohio, and Atlanta, Georgia. But if the people working on the engagement do not specifically have experience in those engagements, then it doesn't really do you a whole lot of good. All the experience I'm about to talk to you about is experience that was done by the Wildan team. And I'll also let Mac talk a little bit about RJN itself. But as you can see, Wildan is a company that does work all throughout the United States. We work from the south shores of Florida to the inside Strait of Alaska. We're concentrated in Texas, Florida, and California. And we do work for about 7 or 8 foreign countries as well, primarily in the Pacific Rim. I mean, my philosophy is somebody's got to do the water race for Fiji. It might as well be me. So, and what's interesting is that those places have a lot of the same water challenges that we have here in the United States. Now, of course, it's great to talk about national and international experience, but now let's talk about Arkansas experience. We have had the privilege of working in Arkansas for the last 25 years. Both myself at Wildan and my predecessor firm, Economist.com, which was acquired by Wildan in 2015. We've worked all throughout the state. And what we pride ourselves on is the long-term relationships we've built with our clients. We've done 8 separate projects for the North Little Rock Wastewater Utility, 8 separate rate studies for them since 1999, 25-year relationship with them. Our real showcase client is Hot Springs. We've done over 30 engagements for Hot Springs in our 20 years of experience with them. You might be familiar with the Ouachita project that they're working on, the big water resource. We did all the financing for that. We've done rate studies for them almost every year for the last 2 decades. And I think it is a symbol of the satisfaction they have with our experience that they keep rehiring us and they keep using us for project after project. Russellville, of course, done 7 projects for them. And then several other projects, Benton, Washington, Community Water System, Conway, Greenbrier, Hot Springs Village, and, of course, the City of Bryant. This chart right here, just real briefly, is our experience of our Plano office specifically. Once again, this is the experience of the project team that will be assisting the City of Bryant. We've done work for over 100 cities in the state of Texas alone. In addition to Arkansas, we've done work for about 45 cities in the state of Arizona. And that's very important because the water challenges of these states are very similar to what you're facing here. Water is a precious and diminishing natural resource. The cost is going up. The average water utility is raising its rates 5 to 6% every year. And so while costs are going up, the challenge is going to get ratepayers to accept the need for higher costs, because after all, nobody wants to pay more for anything at any time for any reason. And so we've had a lot of experience helping cities that have a lot of the similar experience that you have had. Impact fee studies, again, we've had tons of experience doing impact fees, all throughout Texas, Arkansas, and primarily Arizona. Our other Willdan offices do impact fee studies in California and Florida as well. Now let's talk about the city of Bryant. Save the best for last. We had the privilege of being hired to do the last rate study for Bryant. This is the rate study that we completed for the city. It was a challenging engagement. You had a lot of challenges. You had a lot of capital improvement needs. And we were able to work with the city to successfully implement a multi-year water and wastewater rate plan. That plan has enabled the city's revenues to cover its costs for the last several years. And so we would anticipate that the study that we do for the city will be very similar to what we did for the last study. One of the things to keep in mind about rate studies is a, quote, rate study can be anything from a 2-page memo with a spreadsheet attached to it to a comprehensive binder report like what we do. I'm a writer by nature, so I really enjoy writing reports, and I enjoy making my reports as readable as possible. And one of the compliments we get from our clients is that they read our reports and they can actually understand them, because we write them in English and we don't write them in financialese. So, and that's important because the purpose of a rate study is to give you the information you need to make the proper policy decisions for the city. Now, I'd like Mac to talk just briefly about some of the RJM experience in Bryant as well.
Yes, I'm Mac Compton. We've been working with Bryant since, I believe, 2016. We've done several things such as the wastewater master plan previous, and we're under contract to do the new water or wastewater master plan currently. We've also done a bunch of studies on trying to get rainwater out of the sewer. We're doing that as well currently. But with those stormwater master, the wastewater master plan, when you do the impact fees, we are already projecting those in, so when he needs those numbers, we have it at our fingertips. So I think we're a good partner to be with Willdan on this, and he does excellent work, and we've worked with him in several communities already. So.
And of course, we're doing the stormwater plan too. And one of the
stormwater. Oh yeah, we're doing that as well.
Yeah, and what's important is that we already have familiarity with the city. We know the city, we know the system. Our models are already developed, so basically this study is really an update, not a study itself, because our rate model has already been developed, and we have a proven track record of success within the city as well. So I just want to very briefly talk about purposes and goals of a rate study. There are really 3 elements of the study. The first element is to do what's called revenue requirements. Figure out how much money do you need to run your system. Okay? Second thing is what's called the cost of service analysis. In other words, what is the cost for each of your identified customer classes? Residential, commercial, government, schools. Because you see, those different customer classes have different costs. And so it's important to understand what the cost dynamics are within your utility. And then the third is your rate design analysis, where you actually design the rates and make the recommendations. But there are several keys to success in developing a rate study. And the most important key to success is the understanding that a rate study is not just a document you write, drop on your desk, and walk away. A rate study is a process on which you, the decision makers, get the information you need to make the right policy decisions for the city. I've often said rate making is as much an art as it is a science. There is no such thing as one true and correct rate design. Different cities have different types of rates, but a different type of rate design is going to impact ratepayers differently. For example, if you have a high minimum charge and a low volume rate, that's going to have a higher impact on your low volume, low income customers. If you have a low minimum charge and a high volume charge, that encourages conservation, but it also means that high volume users are going to get really hit hard. And so, like I said, you have to balance the financial needs with the public policy, social, community, and political needs as well. Our rate studies have always done that. And that's part of the reason why I think we have the track record of success that we do. Because we recognize that we're asking the city council to make a very difficult decision. You know, nobody wants to raise rates. Nobody wants to pay more. And so the key is to develop a plan that's never going to get people to say, hey, thank you for raising my rates. But what you will get is, hopefully with our plans, is getting people to say, I don't like it, but I understand why it needs to be done. Okay, the key to our whole plan is our rate model. We have a comprehensive rate model that has been used by over 250 cities across the United States and in 9 foreign countries. This rate model was developed for the city of Bryant back in 2020. It was adapted for the city, and I said it would be updated. It's interactive. It allows real-time processing of any changes. So if you want to change a rate plan to a 4% increase as opposed to a 3% increase, it'll show the impact in real time. It's really cool, believe me. And the best thing is, it's already built. And so all we have to do is update it for the purposes of this study, and that will reduce the time and effort involved in a study of this nature. I just want to briefly talk about impact fees in the limited amount of time we have left. An impact fee is a one-time charge paid by new development to finance the construction needed to serve that development. The key to an impact fee is that only growth-related expenses can be included in the fee itself. One of the common complaints about an impact fee, or accusations about an impact fee, is that it is being used by a city to subsidize water rates. It is not. That is not the purpose of an impact fee. It is being used to reimburse you for the cost that is incurred in growth. When cities grow, they incur cost. So the question becomes, who pays that cost? Should it be the people moving in who are causing the cost, or should it be the people who are already there? Our plan and our study would recommend to you a maximum impact fee. You have the ability, as a city, to implement an impact fee from anything at the maximum down to zero. And you can decide you don't want to have an impact fee at all if you want. But what you can't do is have something over the maximum impact fee. And that's what, and again, that's the information that we will provide for you. What we would do is, we would work with the engineering staff, Mac in particular, to evaluate your CIP and determine what portion of the CIP is growth related and what portion is replacement related. That is a little bit, there's always going to be a little bit of subjectivity involved. It's an engineering choice. But the advantage you have is that you've got an engineer who knows your system better than anybody else. And so that makes the decision and that makes the calculation very, very easy. Timeline and deliverables. If we're fortunate enough to be engaged by you and we get a notice to proceed by July, we certainly would have results ready by October in time for workshops in November and for the rate plan to be implemented in January. The last rate plan was adopted a multi-year plan with adjustments in January of each year. We certainly would see that we would be able to make that time frame in this study as well. So you'll be happy to know I'm on my very last slide. This is members of our project team. It's kind of a floating team. I mean, the exact numbers will depend sort of on what the specific task is. The only certainty is Mac and I are definite members of the team. Well, we have Mr. Dan Lanning and Mr. Dennis Squirrel from our Dallas office. You will notice one thing interesting. There's another Dan Jackson on this project. See, Daniel Jackson from RJN. Not as good looking, but still a member of the team. And please tell him I said that. But as you can see, we've got the engineering crew as well. So I guess to summarize, why choose us? Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, we have unparalleled experience, both in Arkansas and across the country. And these are specific experience of the project team. I mean, the firm itself has an amazing amount of experience, but we're talking about the specific project team experience. We're all senior level people. I know it's hard to believe, but I've been at this for 40 years now. And it's hard for me to believe that it's been that long. But we have senior level people that are involved in this. I can't emphasize this enough. We're not just going to write a report for you. We understand that this is a difficult decision. It is a social, community, and political decision. And we will help you. We will help you and provide you the information you need to ultimately make that decision. In other words, we're a partner with you. We will partner with you to make sure that the project gets done properly. And from our prior engagements with Bryant, we have a proven track record. We do our work on time, on budget, acceptable results, and results that have, in the past, had the confidence of the City Council. So So I mean, you could hire another firm to do this, and maybe they will have this, the same level of support, and maybe they will have the same track record as we do, but my attitude is, you already know with us what you're going to get. You know the level of experience and the success that we had in the last projects, and the success we will have in this one. We don't just promise, we deliver. So I do appreciate the chance to come here, and Mac and I would be happy to answer any questions you have at this time.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any questions for him?
So you have already built this model and everything, all you'd be doing is updating the information?
That's correct. Mhm.
And y'all did the last rate study.
That's right, we did. And that resulted in the adoption of a multi-year rate plan. We really like multi-year plans. It's one ordinance, it's one hearing, it's one vote, and it is 5 years of rate adjustments. The rate adjustments automatically go into effect on the given date. And the advantage of that is that the rate adjustments can be very nominal. And the great thing about running a water utility is that you tend to know years in advance when expenses are going to be incurred, when you're going to have to do capital projects, for example. And so by doing the multi-year rate plan, you can ease the rates in over a period of years, and that minimizes the impact on customer bills. Customers do not like big sudden increases. A lot of cities think they do their ratepayers a favor by holding rates down for several years. They're not. All they're doing is delaying the inevitable. And then that time comes when you have to expand the treatment plant, and you have to issue a $15 million bond, and you have to do a 30% rate increase. Guess what happens? Everybody forgets about the fact that their rates have been low for a long time, and they focus on the fact that their bill just suddenly went up by 30%. Whereas, if you do a multi-year plan, you know that you can ease that plan in by 4 to 5% increases each year. And so by the time the bond is issued, people will barely even notice the change. So that's why we always recommend that, and we've always done it.
The model that you said, was it made specifically for Bryant, or is it a model you use and vary among different cities that you work with?
Well, it's a model that varies for cities that we
Okay.
work with. We adapt it for each particular city.
Okay, so-
It takes a lot of work to do that, because what we do is we start with the city's budget, and we ensure that the model reflects the city's budget. And then what it does is it projects expenses and revenues for a 10-year period. So the template is the same, but the amount of work that is taken to adopt the model for a particular city is very complicated. It's kind of like in a financial statement. I mean, a balance sheet is a balance sheet. It's the same for General Motors as it is for a local ice cream shop. But the level of effort it takes to do the balance sheet for General Motors is very different. And so the advantage we have is that we've already done this for Bryant. We know your system, we know your expenses, and all we have to do is update the model for the current year.
Well, I'm just an old country boy, but what's this gonna cost?
Well, I can tell you that the RFP didn't ask for a specific price proposal. I can tell you that the last study, we charged $29,000 for it. And that was for the rate study portion of it. That did not include an impact fee study. There are issues involved.
Yeah,
Can you explain this?
For engineers and such like us, we can't, when there's a proposal out, we can't negotiate on price until we're selected, because
That's state law.
That's why we go out, go out for RFPs,
So
is to get the best.
who agrees to pay? The city council or?
So,
Utility would, right?
so there is money reserved in the budget on the water and wastewater side already, the blanket amount for rate study for this year.
No.
Mhm.
So, we already did that, but they're right, state law and RFP, we did not ask for a price. This is qualification-based recognition.
Mhm. Well, once again, you can use the last study, which is public knowledge, as sort of a benchmark for what the water and wastewater portion of it would do, that level of effort. But also remember, the last study, that was a study that started from scratch. This is not a study that starts from scratch. This is a study for the team that already knows your city. Doesn't have to go up the learning curve.
That's what I was gonna ask, is with you do the last rate study and impact fees and things, and you know the system,
Mhm.
that ought to reflect in the amount of prep time and adjustments to the,
Absolutely. it would.
y'all have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. we'll step out now.
I'm just thinking about my bag. I'll look back here. Oh, somebody's not allowed
Okay, we've got our next one. This is Colin with Raftellus. They're the second firm that submitted an RFP with us. So he's going to give his presentation, same as what I did, and he'll go open for questions as well.
All right. Appreciate the time today. First one here. So we're going to talk a little bit about our firm, Raftellus, review the scope of work a little bit, the deliverables, and some of the things that we believe set us apart. So just starting with Raftellus as a firm, we are a national firm. We do this everywhere. We do work in Arkansas. We've worked for some of the large utilities like Central Arkansas Water, Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority, and I've done the last 2 studies in Bentonville, very similar studies to the one that we would undertake here. But we do have a nationwide presence. We do hundreds of these studies every year as a firm, and then, individually our project team probably, a few dozen a year as well. We started off focused on finance principally, doing rate studies just like this. That was kind of the bread and butter. Since then, as we started to work with clients, we have expanded our offerings to address other issues that clients were having. Things related to strategic planning, communications, executive search, technology, and basically as we heard other needs, we brought in new folks to address those needs. We have 180 consultants across the United States, probably 75% of which are engaged in doing studies just like this, and then the rest kind of fall into those other groups. You can see we've provided similar assistance to over 1,700 public agencies, and we've worked with utilities that serve about 25% of the population. So that's the firm. Now, the benefit of the firm and the skill sets that we bring really falls into the category of resources. So we have a lot of folks that we can bring to bear on these types of projects. We have the core project team, but we also have, we can bring in other folks as needed to address issues as they arise, whether they fall into other areas of practice that may kind of be tangential to the study, or if it's just seeking kind of outside advice and counsel from other folks that have been doing this in other places. We also have the resources if we need to do things quickly, expedite things, if things take longer than we expect, we can bring in additional staff resources, analytical resources. So we've got the core project team that we're going to review with you in a minute, but we do have kind of significant resources both in terms of breadth as well as depth to bring to the project. So in terms of the project team, my name is Colin Dratt. I will be QA/QC manager on the project, and I'm actually pinch hitting for our project manager, Tom Beckley. Tom had a client commitment that was scheduled prior to this meeting. He's actually on his way.
I think he just walked by.
Yeah, just driven by. That ended early, so he's actually on his way, and he may be in a second here.
He may be trying to go to the back door.
But did have that commitment, but did want to do his best to get here, given that commitment ended early, had some flight issues, so he'll be in a bit. But Tom has 23 years of experience doing exactly what we would do here. He works with me in Kansas City, and then we work with Joe Collins as well. So I have 12 years of experience with Raftellus doing these types of studies. over 80 studies for clients around the country. As I mentioned, Bentonville, Central Arkansas Water, Little Rock were the bigger ones that we've done here. And then we'll also have Joe Collins, who'd be kind of the lead analyst on the project, sort of doing the dirty work on the number crunching there. And Joe has a lot of experience doing these types of studies as well. We've also added Matt Witter into our team for the strategic communications component. So I know that just in reviewing and discussing the scope with staff, public communication and strategic communication are an important part of this project, and making sure that the public is aware of the study, what the recommendations are, why we're doing what we're doing, and that they understand and have buy-in to the process. So Matt has experience doing exactly that, including experience at Denver Water and then experience at Raptellus doing strategic communications, and really kind of translating the nuts and bolts of a rate study into a language that is more accessible to kind of people as they're trying to understand what's going on. So that's the core team. We'll get a little bit into the process here. So there's really two primary steps, and then we have some reporting and deliverables there. So in terms of the first step, we're looking at developing a financial plan. And what the financial plan speaks to is really the overall level of revenue that we're looking for the utility to generate. So we're going to look at things like projecting your operating expenses. We're going to look at your capital improvement plan and how we develop a plan to finance that. We'll leverage things like the master plans that are currently underway to make sure those things are incorporated. And then we'll also do projections of usage and account growth. And basically what we'll be doing is comparing the projected expenditures to the projected revenue and identifying any gaps that may be there and determining the overall level of revenue that we need for financial sufficiency to fund all of our operating expenses and our capital investment. So that basically determines the overall, what I'll call size of the pie in terms of the level of revenue that's needed to run the utility. And then from there, we dig into the rates themselves. So that looks at things like the fixed charge, for example, the fixed charge, whether it's by meter size or the same regardless of meter size, the level of fixed revenue recovery, as well as what's in the volume charge, and what's in the minimum charge, that volumetric allotment. So really getting into what your objectives are for the rate structure itself under kind of a revenue neutral way of looking at it. So we decide the overall level of revenue you need, we look at the objectives that we have for the rate structure, and then we'll basically work with you to tailor a rate structure around those objectives. So they could be things like conservation. Conservation is important. You might have a structure that charges a higher unit rate once you go past certain usage thresholds. If revenue stability is important, you want a higher fixed charge. If you're concerned about the impact of the fixed charge on lower usage customers, you might want a lower fixed charge. So it's really about balancing all of those elements, and what we'll do as part of the study is try to prioritize those objectives and then align the structure with those, trying to basically achieve as many of those as we can. So that's the rate design element. And then in terms of deliverables, we'll have a report that summarizes our technical analysis with a kind of a plain language executive summary at the beginning. And then we'll also have an Excel-based model, and we'll look at an example of that, what that looks like in a minute, that the city can use in the future for its use. So it's not a piece of software, but it will kind of incorporate all of our analysis and will be user-friendly, and will also provide city staff support in using that going forward. So if they want to call us to get help on the model, we're certainly happy to do that. One thing we do is sometimes they'll update it, send it to us, we'll take a look at it. So that's all included. We're always happy to hear from past clients in terms of help using the model. So that is part of that. Just looking at your current rate structure here, these are the sorts of things that we'll be digging into when we get to the rate design piece. So I don't know the last time you've taken a close look at this, but we have fixed charges by meter size, which is pretty common for water, and then there's also a system infrastructure fee that is also scaled up by meter size, and then on the sewer side, a flat fixed charge, and then for both, basically uniform volume charges. So in terms of that minimum volume, including 2,000 gallons in the minimum, that's not uncommon, although those are, being phased out. A lot of the reason for that is, and you probably don't have too many, but folks using below the minimum, sometimes the question is, well, if I use less than that, am I overpaying? And really what you're trying to capture with the fixed charge is the fact that most of your costs are fixed. So we deliver water and wastewater service 24/7, 365. Regardless of how much water customers use, those costs don't change. The cost of employing staff doesn't change if water usage changes. The cost of the investment in the ground doesn't change. The only thing that changes is, the cost to actually produce the water and treat the wastewater, the variable cost. So given that most of the costs are fixed, we want a fixed charge that recognizes that. So it's typical for fixed charges to have a cost for meter reading, billing, and collection, the cost to send the bill to the customer. That might be the same regardless of the customer's meter size. A component that recognizes this readiness to serve concept that I mentioned earlier, this availability of service. And that's typically scaled by meter size. And then right now you currently include 2,000 gallons in the minimum. Usually that's going to be the same by meter size, because the 2,000 gallons doesn't cost any more for a 6-inch meter than it does for a 2-inch meter. We also noticed you have a system infrastructure fee. That's not uncommon, just basically kind of making sure that we're capturing that investment in a specific fee, highlighting it for customers. Totally a valid way of doing it. You do have to be careful, as you start adding specific charges on there, that we don't get too many buckets of different things. But I think infrastructure is a large part of the cost, and I think it's important to make sure that's called out and make sure customers understand what's in those charges. So what we'll do as part of the study is we'll basically dig into all of this from top to bottom. How much is in the fixed charge? How much is in the infrastructure fee? What's in the volume charge? Would it make sense to have rates for residential and commercial customers versus charging everyone the same? Is the minimum still appropriate? And what do those charges need to be? And how does that align with our objectives as a community? So those are the sorts of things that we'll dig into, just sort of some observations, initial observations there on the rate structure. This is an example dashboard from one of our models. And really what we're looking to do with these is just some visualization. Let's make sure the laser doesn't, it's not going to go on the screen actually. Okay, don't worry about that. But basically what we're doing is we're calling out some of the key metrics that we use for decision making. So on the upper right there, that graph compares the expenses to the baseline revenues. Basically, if the expense bars are higher than the revenues, then we know we've got a gap. So that's one point of information. And then in the bottom left, that's capital expenditure. So you can kind of see, okay, well, in year 3, we've got a bump that's, significantly higher than the prior years. The advantage to doing long-term planning like we do in a rate study is you get beyond kind of the year-to-year budgeting look at things and you say, okay, well, if I've got something major coming in year 5, 6, 7, 8, rather than waiting to that point, I may want to increment up to that. So using these models and doing these studies is a way to get at that. The model will allow you to look at different scenarios, to manipulate the variables and see the outcomes. It's in Excel, it's custom, it'll be tailored to the city specifically. We don't have a model that we use everywhere. We have principles and best practices that underlie a modeling approach that we tailor to our clients. So the model will align with outputs from your financial information system, customer information system. It'll have the metrics that are important to you in terms of making decisions. And it'll be a tool that for the city to use that'll be, that you will own it basically after. So it's not proprietary, there's no licensing or anything like that. Just touching on impact fees quickly, that was part of the scope as well, kind of digging into that. Really kind of two major approaches and a hybrid there. And what we're looking to capture with impact fees is capacity to serve future growth, the cost of capacity. So we always have to build infrastructure in advance of new development happening, because you can't wait till they get here to build it, right? You have to build it in advance. So there's really two approaches that capture that. One is you look and you say, okay, well, what capacity do we already have available in our system? What's the value of that? And then what's a fee that captures that for new customers? So old customers, existing customers, I should say, have made investment in a system that has capacity available for new customers. And they've already paid for the capacity they need and the additional capacity. So what we're looking to get them to do is to basically buy into their share of capacity to cover that cost of growth. That's the buy-in approach. On the incremental approach, we're really looking forward and saying, what is it that we need to build to have capacity for new development in the future? And under that approach, you're kind of summing up the costs and comparing that to the capacity that you add. The incremental cost divided by the incremental capacity to determine the fee. And then the hybrid is a blend of the two approaches. What existing capacity do we have now? What additional investment will we make in the future? And it's kind of a weighted average of the two options. Just wanted to touch on stakeholder engagement a little bit, communications. There's a lot of different ways to get at this, but what we basically are looking to do is tell our story to our customers. And it's the story of the rate study itself, obviously, but I think it can go beyond that, and a study is an opportunity to share what the utility is doing with customers and the public. We do a pretty incredible thing here at the city, and that's deliver 24/7, 365-day service for, probably pennies a gallon. And whenever the customer turns on the tap, the water's there. Whenever they flush the toilet, they're able to do that. And, even if you increase your rates, it's still relatively inexpensive. So what we like to encourage our clients to do is to celebrate what they're doing and share what they're doing in terms of investment in infrastructure, investments in service, and not have the first time you communicate with the public be, well, we basically need to increase the rates. So it's really a year-round thing. In terms of the scope for this study, it's really about communicating the work that's being done there and the recommendations sort of in a plain language type environment, as well as communicating in different sorts of avenues. So be it social media, a town hall, an open house, and that sort of thing, and just really getting the word out in terms of how the recommendations were developed, really being as transparent as possible. Because what hurts buy-in the most is people not feeling like they're in the dark, because then they feel like you're not being clear, and then that you're hiding something. And what we want to do is explain what we're doing in a way that everyone can understand, and that's where this sort of communication and stakeholder engagement approach comes in with Matt. So what we'll do is we'll develop a tailored plan for stakeholder engagement. We'll look at the types of groups that we're looking to communicate with, be it residents, businesses, other community groups, and say, okay, well, what is the message that we need to share with them, and how do we tailor it in a way that's appropriate for each group? And I'd just like to add this graphic in there. This is a spectrum for stakeholder engagement that we share. We didn't develop it, but it's one that comes from the Public Participation Association. And it really gets at how you do engagement and how you're looking to interact with the public or a group that you're communicating with. And on the left side of the spectrum is what we call inform. And that's basically you're going to tell them what you're doing in a way they can understand. And on the very right side of the spectrum is you're going to ask them what they want, and you're going to do it. And then in between is, different levels of input back and forth and that sort of thing. And in terms of stakeholder engagement, what we're looking to do is sort of find an appropriate place on that spectrum. So that gets to groups like this that really, dig into the issues and help inform the council in terms of decision making. Other options are open houses, where you basically set up so that people can come in and talk one-on-one and try to understand what's going on with different stations. And it could also just be a formal presentation, whether it's to this group or to council or even a town hall meeting. But what we want is for the people that participate in the engagement to come out of it feeling like they understand what's going on, and that even if they don't like it, they understand the why and they feel like they can support it. So just to wrap up before we get to Q&A, get Tom up here. Why Raftellus? Well, we talked about the people. Certainly the firm, we're a well-resourced firm. We have a lot of people to bring to bear on the project as needed, but we also have an experienced project team that's worked for some of the largest utilities in the state as well as in the country. In terms of process, we have a process for delivering these projects efficiently and effectively, and that comes from having done them everywhere over and over and over again. We're proven, tested, trusted by clients, many repeat engagements, including some of those larger ones in Arkansas that we talked about. And we also have a passion for the business and for the industry and for the important work that we all do. So I hope that comes through. And then I would just add maybe one more P, and that's just some perspective. What I think we also offer is just sort of a fresh perspective. This is not the first time you've done this. There are new requirements in terms of Act 605 and making sure we tick the boxes there. We would certainly be learning about you all and your city as we go, but we have a lot of experience to bring to bear to get up to speed. And what we also have is the perspective of having done it everywhere else and a fresh perspective to bring to this project. So with that, I'll stop and we can do Q&A.
You mentioned that you've done projects for Central Arkansas Water and Little Rock Water. Do you have experience working in Arkansas with cities and city municipalities the size of Bryant?
It was Lakeville. So the one that pops in my head.
Hi, it's nice to see you all. I know I met you by teleconference. American Airlines didn't want me to get here, but I guess I get here. We've done projects for Central Arkansas Water, Little Rock Water Reclamation Authority, used to be Little Rock Wastewater. We're currently working with the city of Bentonville. I've done a project for the city of Blytheville, and we're going to do another one for them here in a year or two, is what they've indicated. And then El Dorado is another past client of ours. So, I'm not going to lie to you, Arkansas is not our strongest state, but we certainly have experience, and we have a lot of, experience working for similar utilities in other states as well. The one unique thing about Arkansas are some of the new Act 605 requirements. That's relatively neat, but it really just requires you to do a rate study like we do for our clients all across the country, in addition to some other asset management type things that are part of that requirement. As well as, of course, as some of you may be familiar with training for the elected bodies of some of the utilities.
What states around the country do you see most of your focus in?
As a firm, we work in, I want to say, close to every state. Colin and I personally focus on the Midwest, from basically Michigan to Kansas, down here to Arkansas, although we both have clients in other parts of the country. Like currently, I'm working for Henderson, Nevada. Colin's working for Suffolk, Virginia. But that's kind of our geographic focus. We're out of the Kansas City office in case
That was-
you guys didn't see that.
I thought I caught that, Kansas City, so,
No.
okay.
So yeah, we're out of the Kansas City office. Back when I started with the firm 24 years ago, we only had one office, Charlotte, North Carolina. Kansas City was actually our second office, and now we have 14 offices all across the country.
When your study is done, do you present just one recommendation
Well-
to the city, or do you bring a variety of?
Given the
extra
process that's kind of been described to us, again, we had a little meeting with staff, and plus what you described is what I would expect this to look like. And of course, this can all be, discussed as, at the very beginning of the project, how you want to do this. But given the input of this body, I would expect we would work on look at different options, but then ultimately, by the time you get to asking city council to make a decision, I would think we may want to say, here's our recommendation, here's why. Because one thing we like to do as part of this interactive process is pricing objectives. And we would want to look at that early on, and it's really, what are the objectives that we want to accomplish with the rates? Do we want to focus on conservation? Do we want to focus on affordability? Do we want to focus on revenue stability? And by looking at that early on, then when we get towards the end and we start to do the rate design that Colin talked about, we can tell you, well, here's the tweaks we make to the rate structure to accomplish these objectives. So we're not just making changes saying, this is what's best for you. We make changes to accomplish specific pricing objectives that you have indicated are important to the community of Bryan.
I did not see a timing layout. I think we're kind of looking at possibly putting rates in by the first of the year. So is that an issue or a problem, or?
No, and what we tell, because again, we had a discussion with some of your staff last week, and they indicated that they would, but that the impact fees might come a little later. But certainly 6 months, that would not be an unreasonable schedule. This project, the one thing that we were unsure of in our proposal, quite frankly, was the amount of public engagement, because that was a little open-ended in your RFP, and that's why we didn't have a more specific schedule, quite frankly, in our proposal, because there was a list at one point that said, hey, we want to engage not only this committee, but members of the public, developers, and everything else, and there wasn't a set kind of definition of how much engagement you wanted, because we did a project for Little Rock Wastewater, and this was about 10 years ago now, where we had monthly meetings for 6 months with a rate advisory committee, and that was how we engaged the stakeholders in that one. And that's a very detailed and very comprehensive approach, but obviously lengthens the schedule. But based on our, the subsequent discussion we had with staff, yeah, January 1st would be a reasonable.
I didn't see a schedule there, so.
So we're talking about like a 5-year scale plan.
So what I always tell my clients is, we can do a 100-year rate plan if you want. But the real question is, how far out do we have any confidence in what our capital requirements are? And that's really as far as we can reasonably go. How far out do we have visibility in what we think we need to spend on capital and for how long? Because beyond a few years, typically utilities, beyond 5 to 10 years typically, utilities really have not much visibility into what the capital requirements are. Now, I actually did, and this was a little while ago, but we did a 116-year rate plan one time for San Francisco Public Utilities Commission, because they were figuring out how to earthquake-proof their water supply. And so that was an asset that had a 100-year useful life that was going to take them 16 years to build. So we did a 116-year analysis. But that was a very specific requirement. But I mean, we can go out as long as you want. The columns on Excel don't cost us any extra money, I like to say. But the reality is, if we don't have any confidence in our capital plan, it doesn't do you any favors to go out if you don't really know what your capital requirements are going to be there. And of course, one of the challenges as a utility we face, even on the water side, it used to be particularly on the wastewater side, but with forever chemicals, PFAS, PFAS, is we don't know what regulatory requirements are going to look like more than 5 or 10 years out.
Well, the reason I asked that is, let's say we do a 5-year plan. The model you're going to provide for us, if we have an airport with some industrial around it, we have other things where some major customers could be coming in that would change some of the dynamics. Are we able to go into your model and make those adjustments and adjust on the fly?
Yes. So either you could have us do that, or as Colin mentioned, you know, one thing we're proud of is, at the end of the project, we're going to give your staff a Microsoft Excel-based rate model, and we will provide them training on how to use it. And, you know, a lot of our clients use that model on their own without our help. Some of them, you know, have us update it on a, you know, periodic basis. But it's there, and unless you have a dramatic change. The one thing is, you know, the rate design piece, the rate structure piece, that's the one thing that, you know, can sometimes change, but that's not a, you know, an expensive change if something dramatic changes that you need to make a change to that in the model.
Does this 5-year time frame, does that encompass the saline water situation, or is that outside the scope, or is that going to?
Yeah, it's outside the scope. Like
Okay.
2030 is still the target date for that, so it's not included.
If we did need some adjustments like that, is that additional cost? Or is that built in?
No, typically, if you come to us 2 years down the road and say, hey, we had a big change, we need to make this change to the model, but it's not a very expensive change, I would say, to tweak the model if there's dramatic changes. Now, if it's just, hey, our commercial or industrial customers doubled, it's not going to be a big deal. And quite frankly, it depends somewhat on what changes we made in the rate structure. You know, I looked at, you know, your last rate report, and, you know, the analysis was pretty straightforward that was done last time. Unless we make it significantly more complex, which I'm not sure you guys would even have a desire to do. But I think the key thing I would expect you may want to look at is what Colin touched on. Is the mix of are the fixed charges really where we want them to be versus the volume charges? Do we want to still have the minimum? Where the minimum, and Colin alluded to this, where I've seen the minimum come into play, and like I have a client, we were talking to them earlier this week, where they used to have 3,500 gallon minimum. Last year we lowered it to 2,000 gallons, where you guys are at, and now we're talking this year to lowering it to either 1,000 or 0. Because the people was impacting, when we looked at their water bills, you might be surprised that 2,000 and below, I would just guesstimate without having seen your data, that 20% of your annual bills are probably below 2,000, which means 20% of your people may think that they're paying for something that they're not getting when they see a minimum. And the impact it can have especially is on a single retired person living on a fixed income who may only use 1,000 gallons a month. And so there is an opportunity there, because what we did with that client is for the people between, when we lowered the bill from 3,500 to 2,000 minimum, everybody between 2,000 and 3,500, their bill still went up a little that year, but it went up less than everybody else's bill when we made that adjustment.
But if you remove the minimum, would that affect the rate you would charge?
Of course, it would be built in, because whatever we do, because as Colin mentioned, you know, kind of the first step is determine how much money we need to make, what our revenue requirement is. We need to make $30 million this year, you know, to make up a number out of thin air. And, you know, when we do the rate design, it's going to be revenue neutral. We'll look at a range of rate design options for your rates, but they'll all be designed to generate that $30 million. And I heard Colin use my favorite analogy, which is first we figure out how big the pie needs to be, and then we decide how we're going to slice the pie among all the customers.
Any other questions? Thank y'all.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Can we take a 2-minute recess?
You're all right to take a little recess before we get into discussion. Does anybody need a little recess?
You already did for sure, so I'm okay.
Make a motion to recess.
I have a motion for a 5-minute recess.
I'll second.
I have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, 5-minute recess.
Okay, I didn't know they were gonna come back in when, okay.
They were given the option there, so.
Okay, well then, can I start the meeting back up and open discussions? I saw some good points from both. What do we have budgeted for this study?
Overall, 100,000.
I'm sorry, what did, okay,
Overall, 100,000, 50,000
Oh.
wastewater, 50,000 water.
oh, okay.
So,
But
was
these are
the,
just water.
No.
They're both,
These are-
okay.
These are your water, your wastewater rates, and impact fees were included
Okay.
in the RFP. The option we have, because the impact fee study has potential to take longer, we could do the rate studies and the impact fees kind of the same company separate.
Would,
so the
would,
fact that we already have experience with that, the first firm,
Wildan,
that should equate into a lower bid, but it's not the volume where it's going to make a big difference on what we're doing.
they should have the model already, they just gotta plug in the new information, correct?
I'm not going to speak to a bid price, but they did say they had the model already.
Yeah.
I mean, just, I would think that a lot of the cost would be building the model and entering the data. So, starting from scratch or starting with something you already have.
That's probably the best way to say it, yeah.
But if we're only talking 30,000, 40,000, if we save 2,000 by going with them, then it might be worth that extra 2,000 to get a different aspect on the rates.
You're talking about one with the other companies.
So if you went with, you're talking about, the
Is there an advantage?
first one's got the experience, but the second one may look at something differently that we haven't looked at before.
Well, they might see something that the first company, since they've already done it, might not quite go as an in-depth look at, and they may see something that they think that might affect us in the future that might just, I don't say, I will accidentally be overlooked because they've
Yeah.
already worked with us before. They might,
We don't want them to rubber stamp it.
right. But I don't think they'll do that. I felt well with the Wildan people. I thought he presented well, and I liked what he showed, and
No matter who does the
I was
study,
impressed.
it's up to the city staff to give them information
Right,
to make it
for them
correct.
to know what to
So,
look at.
That's
Okay.
on us, to make sure they have all the information they need.
But one really important question is, how satisfied were you as a staff with the last one that was done by the first company?
So the last time it was done, and I might get this timeline wrong, we had one done by a company, and then council requested another one. So that was when Wildan did the second one.
Okay.
And I believe that finished kind of in the end of the year. So that took from January to April vote for workshops and actually to implement the rates. So we were 5 months behind by the time we implemented the rate anyways. I don't necessarily think there's anything wrong with what they did. I wasn't public works director at that time. That was a different one. So,
Did you like the approach they took as far as, the second company brought up the fact of the lower income and the minimum, if they have that kind of a mindset when they're looking at it, to where I picked up on the first one, they talked about like the impact fees, and for the growth, your established customers shouldn't have to pay to grow something that doesn't affect them.
yeah, your customers are already here, already paying for the capacity they're using.
Can you speak to why the council had wanted a second look?
Not officially, but I was street superintendent
Right.
at the time, I wasn't involved in that at all.
Okay.
So, I don't know.
Can the council answer that?
I don't remember why.
Okay.
But I know that they didn't communicate. I think that the reason for the delay in implementation is that you didn't have good communication with the public.
I would agree with that.
And
for
the
sure.
public was outraged, and so that delay cost us like $1 million out of depreciation by the pay for the increase in the water. But the water increase happened whether we passed it on or not.
Right.
So, did you like the public interaction with explaining the rates that was done by the first company that presented tonight? The ones that did the last rate study,
The first
Realtor.
presenter. You're talking about the first presenter.
The first presenter, did they do a good job of communicating?
Well, I don't know, they didn't communicate, or the city didn't communicate to the ratepayers what's going to happen.
No, I think he's asking you if you were satisfied with tonight's presentation. Is that what you were asking?
No, I was asking, there was a lot of outrage on
Oh,
the
I
rates
see.
going up and stuff. And there was probably some,
To not necessarily speak to what happened in the past, what I do know is presently, city staff, mayor, council, there is an enormous push to
A lot of
get
communication.
information out, and public input and this and that. So regardless if you pick A or B, it's gonna be something that has to be done. It'll be in the scope of work, it'll be in the contract, so.
Historically, have we used the same company multiple times in a row, or do you need, in the past, have we changed every couple of years for,
No.
I mean, sometimes a fresh perspective is good, so, but sometimes if you've got a company that's doing a good job, and,
Yeah.
it's kind of, we've got to weigh those two
You don't
options.
penalize them for
Right. you
doing a
don't-
good job.
Right,
Yeah,
yeah.
we do. RJN is contracted by Chris, who's doing our water and wastewater plant also.
So they're subbing that part out, where the
They're
second,
the model.
right, the second company, did they have it all in-house? It sounded like they did.
RJN is on,
No, he
Oh,
does- he-
Raftels.
Raftels does
Raftels?
everything
Yes.
in-house, yes.
yes.
They were all in-house, okay? I mean,
Their
there's,
communication as well as on.
there is some benefit to that, because I know we sub stuff out sometime, and so.
Mr. Chairman, one of the things that I thought was interesting is Rapidos had a whole section on communication, and that they did mention Act 605.
yeah.
I think that's going to be crucial as we communicate with our residents, that the laws changed since the last rate study. So that, to me, was, I think the technical side, we both of them are probably extremely qualified. But it did stick out to me how much Raptil was focused on community engagement and helping our residents understand Act 605, which is something we've already been talking about internally and making plans to start sending out information to people to get, just to begin to understand the law that all of this has been legislated to us.
I made a note that the communication to the stockholder, would they be, they're not doing it, the city's doing it, correct? Is it more than we already do?
Yeah, they said that they have guidelines built in as a part of their scope that they, or part of their proposal.
They'll
So they kind of
consult
asked
with
us how
them.
much they have, guides that they use for other cities that they tailor to our city and our size and things like that. So they tailor it to us and give it to us with the option of using them or, doing it ourselves and laying the groundwork on ourselves. So there's different tools that we can use there.
Which one are you talking about?
Reptiles.
Okay.
So the few notes that I made is I like the fact that Wildan put up the time frame and it fell right in what we needed. And then I made a note that they should be less since they've already done this, and they should be just plugging in new numbers and reviewing it. But then for the Raftellus, like you said, the communication and, but I wasn't sure if they were doing that or if the city was doing that, so that was why.
605 is a state requirement, correct?
Correct.
So another plus for them would be the fact that they work with so many cities in the state of Arkansas. They should be very familiar with that act by now too. Even though they didn't bring it into their presentation, I'm sure they're aware of it. They've worked with a few more cities in that respect. I did like that. Now I do have a couple of questions for y'all. Whenever whoever we select comes in and starts work, will they come to you and ask, for example, the things that Ralph just brought up, is the possibility of doing away with the minimum and how it could affect things. Do they ask you, are you going to stick with this, or do you want to do some changes, or will they give you like 2 examples of with and without, things like that? Or how do they know what to present back to us, what we want? How do they know
That's
this?
actually probably where we kind of lean on their expertise, because we've done the way we've built now for so long. So is the current climate changing? How is it changing? And does that fit financially?
Okay.
Yeah, they did mention that they would set objectives with us in the beginning, like they had talked about. Are you wanting to, look at your customer rates? Are you wanting to have your revenue stability? Are you wanting to plan for growth more? So it's kind of the city setting the objective that we want and then them tailoring the rates to that as well.
Was this both companies or just one particular?
I think both will do it.
Okay.
That's also something we would come back to you guys in council and say, hey, these are some of the options, which roads do we want to go down? Again, the whole point of this being awkward
Yeah.
is to make sure we have involvement and group decision and make the best decision for Brian.
Yeah, outside city limit customers too is another rate that obviously
Right.
took place this last year that we enacted that was already in the rate studies or in the rate ordinances. So they'll also, both companies will also look at the outside city limit rates as well.
When this decision's made, water rates, wastewater rates, and impact study all goes into the same blanket. It's not split up either or,
It'll be two separate studies, but under the same company, because we did the RFP as one, but with
Okay.
Act 605, so both companies will do separate water and wastewater rate studies that's compliant with Act 605, and then an impact fee study, because that takes a lot more conversation.
Well, I did like the thing that Madison brought up about the new perspective, because if you're looking at pros for either one, that's a pro for the Raftellus, I thought, because, yeah, it would be just a new perspective, and
That can be good or bad.
it could be, you're
Yeah.
right, either way, so I don't know if it's a pro or a con, but it is a different perspective to look at, so. I was impressed with both of them.
Yeah. I kind of got the feeling of the first one was more of a, worked with our size utility, and the second one
Larger utilities.
worked with larger utilities. But there's pros and cons to both of those. Kathy, you don't have a question?
No, I don't.
Okay.
Does this have to be unanimous, or how's that work? Well, there's 6 of us. It could be 3 and 3.
Well,
Nancy's watching and listening. Does she have anything she'd like to say that we could hear?
she said she would let me know. She was on speaker, but she said she would let me know if she had any questions.
Oh, okay. I didn't know if she wanted to express an opinion to us about how she felt about it.
Okay,
So, they'll talk to you and get the kind of the initial framework. Will you give them a list of what we anticipate the future growth and the infrastructure rebuild stuff, and they'll go
They'll
off
have
of
our new
that?
master plan.
So you'll pretty much set the goals and they'll figure out how to get there.
Yeah, one of the reasons we started the master plan that we did was to fall in line with this rate study and the Act 605 stuff.
you guys, and I don't even know if this is appropriate to ask, but are you guys leaning toward one over another one, since we've worked with the first company before in the council?
I kind of have stuck to the guns and said I want.
I'm sorry?
I've stuck to my guns and said I want your input on it.
Yeah.
We've worked with Wilden, we haven't worked with Raftellus.
Yeah.
It's not fair for me to make an opinion about it.
Right, right,
So pretty much we're going to give them the parameters they have to work in.
Yeah,
yes.
they'll develop their scope.
Yeah, and they're just going to have their own take on how to get there. And they'll show us options. We need to pick out the company and we think will show us the best options and the best communication style.
Now, they can't put in a bid until we select one of them, correct?
You guys made a recommendation to council will get the ultimate decision, and then we'd sit down and talk about scope of work, contract, the actual cost, etc.
We didn't do competitive bidding, we did the different style, the RFP, so that it wasn't based necessarily on cost, it was more based on qualification to make sure we're getting the best product and not just the best price with how important this rate study is.
It was open to everybody who was on the ANRC approved list, and those were the only 2 we got.
How many are on the list?
35.
Some, yeah,
32. There's not a lot, and one of the requirements of Act 605 is they have to be on that approved list.
I would
And
thought-
most of them are engineering firms that are on that list, so they don't always submit bids, so.
So in this RFP, was there I'm probably not going to phrase this right, but was there a minimum or maximum of different avenues we could go? Like they had to provide at least 2 different plans?
Yes.
There was a minimum and maximum?
Yeah, there was, at least provide multiple options regarding rate structure showing comparisons between rate increases with no adjustment to impact fees, adjustment to rate structures with impact fees, and adjustment to both. And then a couple other areas about the assessing the impact. Yeah, it was pretty clear on how many.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
So
provide
they just can't
5-year.
come back and go,
Yeah, no, and both will provide 5-year recommendations for periodic rate and impact fee updates based on updated financial and demographic, and share compliance, yeah, so.
okay.
Well, I make a motion that we vote for recommend Willdan.
Are we ready for that, or are we on discuss more? Well, do I have?
If nobody seconds it, then we're gonna
Do
talk
we have
about
a
it.
second?
Well, let me ask one question before we vote on that. Leroy, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is that appropriate to do since the motion's on the floor?
Rescind my motion?
Oh.
Since it
okay.
didn't have a second, I don't guess I have an option,
Well,
I'll rescind
just,
it.
okay, just for a minute. The one thing I guess I thought about was, I remember Willdan talked that they had a model that they gave to the city, and it was user-friendly. Then Raftellus also has, they said, a spreadsheet
Excel spreadsheet.
that it was kind of user-friendly. I don't know how user-friendly it would be compared to this. And my impression was they both would do the same thing. You could go in either one and make some changes and kind of update. Basically, the same type thing we would get. So there's really no difference to look at that way. So, all right. I just wanted to be sure I understood them that. And that was all I had to ask. So literally, you know that. Okay.
How has the communication been with both of them? Have they been receptive, quick to return calls, provide information?
Since we're dealing in deficit dollars, isn't it pertinent that we take the less expensive, or what should be the less expensive? Somebody that's already done a lot of the pre-work?
I don't think the cost difference is going to be enough. I mean, if we were talking total cost of $1 million and
It wasn't wrote at the lowest bid.
Oh, yeah.
They said they can't, in an RFP, they can't give you a price.
Right.
A set price.
We just assumed that he would be the lower.
We would anticipate they would be less expensive, basically.
well, let's ask this. Let's say we went with the second firm that has no data in theirs. Their price came in over what we have budgeted. Do we have any kind of a recourse to take it back out?
There's a do not exceed of what our budgeted amount is. So they know
Okay,
that.
so they know that in advance. All right.
Any other discussion? Any other questions?
I'll resubmit my motion then. That we vote on Willdan.
I'll second that.
Okay.
Was that the first guy or the second?
The first.
The first.
First guy.
All right, we have a motion and a second to recommend Willdan. You want to, do we need to do like a roll call vote or just a vote?
Okay.
Huh?
Probably.
Roll call.
I vote for the first one, the Willdan.
I agree. First, Willdan.
Would say no.
I say yes.
I say yes.
I say no too, just because I feel like it needs more discussion. But we have a majority vote. So it's 4-2. So with the majority vote, the recommendation of this committee is Willdan to the city council. Yes,
decide.
council has
Oh,
the
yeah.
final decision.
Yeah.
You just have our recommendation.
And four of them are here to make their presentations, so they probably have their own opinion.
Will they do the presentation again, is that what you said?
No, they don't do it again.
I think one of the things we talked about was, you guys assume that it's going to be less, but I didn't hear him say that.
Right, he did not.
Explicitly that it would be
Exactly,
less.
he did not.
So you assume that it will, but you don't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't,
Yeah, without it being a cost estimate, you don't know.
We don't know.
if the second one was good with their time frame being able to hit it, then that's
Yeah,
probably
they
not
both,
that
they
big
both have
a
the
deal.
timeline presented, they both will have them ready to go by January. That was discussed and asked.
Well, then that,
Well, we'll
having
need
the
it for
information in the
January,
price
though, won't
model already might not be as big
They'll
of
have
a
it
factor.
ready to go to vote by January, so they'll have it ready for us by October.
Okay.
Yeah. The goal is to have it voted on in December, so that's in act by
Right.
January.
Have we checked any references?
Yeah.
Well, I think are we ready to move on to the next agenda item, or
I don't know, Tim's
everybody's gone?
back in here just yet. I don't know if he's gonna bring him back in or not.
So I have a question. So if the council decides that they do not want to go with the recommendation that was voted in, where do we have to go back to square one to get, what would we do?
There's only one other option that presented.
Yeah, I don't know for sure, but our ask for, month is it, June's council is that they're going to make a decision on one or the other so that we can move forward, because we'll have to put the master plans in a lot of data. So
Okay.
we're going to ask, but it's up to them. If they want to
Yeah.
bring it back to you guys, they can bring it back to you guys.
Well, I appreciate y'all coming and listening to the presentations and our concerns when we were talking. You know, I understand it's y'all's ultimate decision, but I hope we helped you make a more informed decision.
I appreciate y'all's time.
Okay. We need to move on to the next agenda item.
I told them to do it just for them, but you can tell them you guys can come.
This committee is going to recommend to council that they choose your firm, but you will get the recommendation from this committee, but the ultimate decision will be up to the council. But as you see, we had a number of council members here for your presentation and for our discussions. So I think they've got about as informed as they can be to make that decision, but y'all are the firm that we're going to recommend.
We very much appreciate the vote of confidence. It means a lot. And we definitely look forward to working with you all again.
Okay, now do we move on to topic 5?
I was just after yeah, we can move on.
Okay,
Yeah, the next one was just the bill breakdown information.
Thank y'all again. Sorry to interrupt.
thank you.
I'm not sure if you guys saw, but the other Whiteboard Wednesday came out with Tim and Raven from CAW on the CAW's watershed protection fee. We're going to be going through the bill each month again and doing, different things for different months, so you'll see many more videos to come.
Did we tell you where to find those, or you get an email to you?
Email them to us.
Well, they're on the city website in Galway, right? This is a section called We Are Bryant. You can also sign up on the notify me and leave emails to, and then they have a We Are Bryant Instagram page too that they're posting. It's just not the Whiteboard Wednesdays, it's all sorts of information and what's happening.
Could you email that to us?
I'll email you guys
The links or whatever, yeah. I could hear it, but I have something to reference back to. I'll probably find it.
Or
Are you all getting those emails with the whiteboard Wednesdays and?
I don't think I am.
I don't think I am.
You're not?
I don't think so.
We need to make sure they're all.
I'm getting them on my personal email.
You signed up on it.
We'll make sure your emails are in there, because we based it off of what we had in the water department, and so we're still missing some people. We're trying to get everybody on that list.
Yeah, I went in and signed up for the different notifications and things on the website. Yeah, I don't remember seeing them.
This is different. Okay, we'll make sure you get that.
Jordan can pull it off our.
Yeah, sorry about that. That was an oversight on our part.
Well, and I would ask that committee members, if y'all are on social media, if you see something you like, share it. Help get those videos out.
Yeah, there was one,
Yeah, we appreciate that.
especially the last one.
All right, anything else on bill breakdown information? Okay, our last agenda item is Saline Regional update.
Yeah, a couple of us met with Tad from Central Arkansas Water to discuss the possibility of different partnership options. We had positive discussion, everything was good. We had a Saline Regional workshop where we also discussed, we brought back those options to them and discussed all the different ones that we could, different avenues that we could take. The current one on the table that was up for discussion was the easements. Is there enough room? How would it look? How much cost would it add? What would the partnership look like? Things like that. So the board asked Chris Engineering, who's our engineer on the project, to go back and kind of develop more detailed scope on the preliminary easement route before we get back with CAW to decide on that. So still in discussions on that and how that looks, or how it could potentially look. Other than that, still moving forward. Chris is doing the engineering that they are supposed to be doing, so just kind of a waiting game for right now until we get some more engineering done. And we'll keep you posted on options to partner with CAW. Any questions?
Any discussion or questions on that?
When's your next meeting date?
June 27th.
June 27th?
I would say I'd be there, but I know that's my mom's birthday, and she'll probably have me doing something. Okay, that is the end of our agenda now. Any further questions, concerns?
5:30.
I would entertain them.
I think I'll make a motion, we adjourn. huh?
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor?
No.